barrel, and we're going to be creating the iconic medieval coopered barrel. And a coopered barrel is a barrel that is made of wood that has got like cast iron coopers or rings around it to hold into place. And I think they're quite cool. You know, you can have some fun with branding, which hopefully you guys will have a little bit of fun with. You don't have to, obviously, you don't have to follow what I've done here. I've just been a complete nerd and put some D&D branding on here. But this is what we're going to create. We're going to create a barrel. Looks very cool. Can have a lot of fun. These can be everywhere in the scene. These can be for just populating a scene environment, or they can be used for platforming, or you can even destroy them and have something left inside them, or they can explode. Barrels are one of the most diverse assets you'll ever use, and if you ever see a red one, obviously we all know what to do. So we want to create a new project, just making sure that we've saved this one. We want to create a new project because we're going to be creating a new asset. So I will then go to New Scene, File, New Scene. There we go. I'm just changing the background color there by pressing Alt and B. B for background, alternating background. Okay, so again, File, Project Window. I'm going to go for Barrel Build, and then I'm going to put that inside FutureWorks. Yes, I am. Stick it in there. Boom. Right, okay. So this is another time where we're going to have to think about what is the basic shape of a barrel. It's a cylinder. It's a squat cylinder. And that's what we're first going to create when we're creating our thing. Now, the level of complexity is going to be ramped up with this build because it's not as simple as just creating the crate. This is going to be an asset that we're going to kind of like poke and prod and pull bits out, push things in, and distort it a little bit. A few more tools are going to be used in this. But again, it's a very, very simple thing to make. And in fact, I tend to make barrels for poops and giggles when I'm bored. I think they're fun to make, and it's good to time yourself how fast you can make one. Okay, so like I said, we're going to go for a cylinder. So inside my polygon menu here. Oh, before we start off, just make sure we set our project just to make sure we're definitely saving there. Okay, so we're going to make a cylinder. So inside our polygons menu, we've got sphere, cube, cylinder. So we'll create that, and then we'll hold shift and drag it out. So this is the basic. Oh, let's just do our translate stuff first. So translate X and translate Z. Put that to 0. Cool. So this is our basic cylinder shape when we get a perfect cylinder. This obviously is not the same sort of scale as we want. If we go back to our example, it's a bit taller. This is a little bit taller than our asset we've got over here. Okay, so first things first, I want to pull this lid up, and I want to make our height. Before I make the girth and the bend of our barrel, I want to make the height of our barrel. Okay, so I'm going to do this by holding right click, going to vertex, and then selecting all the very top ring of my cylinder, and I'm just going to pull that up like that. And I'm going to kind of use my mind's eye at this point and just think, you know, how tall does this want to be? I don't want to make it super realistic. I also don't want to make it super stylistic. I want to make it a nice little medium. So I'm going to bring it to about there. Okay, there's one thing we can do as well. We've not used our changing camera angles. If I hold space, we're going to get this menu. And this is just a very quick way of actually getting to all the menu sets that are up at the top here. And if I click in the middle there, you see Maya. And if I hold left click there, you get all these perspective view, new camera, right view, bottom view, front view, These are just different camera angles. But the other camera angles are different from this one. This one we have perspective applied. And I would have, in class I would have explained this. Perspective is obviously If something's further away from us, it's smaller. The closer it gets, the bigger it appears to become. An orthographic view is a view with no perspective. So something might be a million miles away and something might be 2 foot away, but then both assets will look identical, will look exactly the same size because there's no perspective being taken into consideration at this point. So I'm going to hold down space. I'm going to hold down left click in the middle, and I'm going to go to the right view. There's a different way we can do this as well. If we just tap space while hovering in just over in our space, we tap space, and that'll take us to our 4 view. And if I hover over any one of these windows, I'll change to this one. So obviously this top right one is my perspective. This top left one is my top. You can kind of see there it says top at the bottom. There you go. It says, and then front and side. Okay. So I'm going to go to the right view. Okay. And so we've used this function before. This is the snap to vertex or snap to grid function. I'm going to use the snap to grid function to actually snap to one of these grey lines. That way, I don't know, it's just nice to have something it's nice to keep it nice and mathematically correct or regular or whatever. So I'm going to make sure everything's selected at the top, hold X. You can see there it's going to circle, it's going to become a circle in the middle, means it says snapping to, and then we can see what snap it is up here, you can see it's a grid. And I'm just going to drag it down using the arrow to there. You don't have to do that at all, it's just something you can do if you want. Now, one thing that I will point out is I've not changed the radius count of edges here. Now, we've not done that in the crate, and we've not done that in this either. I'll just do an example now. So if I bring another cylinder in, I can then, in the channel box, you can see we've got this inputs polycylinder 2. We've got the height, got the radius, got the subdivision axis. That's what I'm looking at now. And at the minute it's set to 20. And if I actually click subdivision axis so it's blue, and then middle mouse drag in the scene, you can see that the number of sides is now changing. And it's directly proportionate to the number here. So if I want to make like a really low poly 8-sided barrel, I can do that. Or if I want to make a super high poly 50-sided barrel, I can do that. But now for ease, we're just keeping it nice and 20. Okay, 20-sided thing. Now there's something very important that I will probably go over in class, but if I've not, I'm going to go over it now. When we're dealing with any sort of round objects, spherical objects, cylindrical objects, anything like that, I find it good practice to always keep at least one equal division going down the center or around this side. And I mean this. There's a line which can basically break up our object into 2 parts. Same going from like that. So if we wanted to delete all this top half, we can do that. We can have the same equal side either side. So I always try and keep a nice little cross in the middle. It just makes it look nice and equal to use. If anything goes wrong, it's easy to fix. If I need to do kind of like if I need to quarter the object to then duplicate it again later on, it's really easy to do. But let's not worry about that too much. Right, so first things first, if we go back and look at our reference, one very, very iconic, besides the actual rings going around it, one very iconic thing about these crates, barrels, whatever, is the actual shape of them. They are cylindrical, but then they're bowed out like this. They're in sort of like they've got a curve to them. So first things first is I want to create this curve, and I'm going to do this in a couple of parts. I'm going to create a curve in the middle first, and then I'm going to create a curve at the top and the bottom, and then I'm going to create these actual parts for the rings, and it'll make complete sense when I do it. Okay, so this is when we're actually going to start using new functions, new tools, which we would have gone over in class, obviously. So now I'm going to select everything in Edge. well, not everything. I'm going to select only the middle. So I'm not going to select anything up here. I'm not going to select anything up here. I'm just going to draw a thin line, a thin marquee box over the center like that. And then I'm going to go up to Edit Mesh, Mesh Tools, and then I'm going to go down to Connect. And then that will give me this one line going down the center. And if I open my tool settings again, it's going to not work for me again. There we go. I've got slide, segment, and pinch. And if I have these selected, so I've got segment selected, and I'm not holding anything on my keyboard now, but if I middle mouse drag in the scene, you can see I can increase the amount it's segmented. With slide, I'll do the same. You can see that I'm actually sliding this division up and down. So if I don't want it in the middle, if I want it more towards the top, I can easily move it. And then pinch, it only works. Pinch only works with 2 or more, but pinch is how far apart these go. So if I want 2 divisions, but I want them more at top, like that, I can do that. Very cool. But all I want is 1. I want the slide to be in the middle. 0.5 means it's in the middle of something, and pinch I can switch to 0 because nothing's there. Okay, so that's that been added, and then once I'm happy with it, I can press enter, and then it's been complete. Now I've got this new division going around the center of my object. So we've actually added more geometry, where before we were extruding in and then extruding down to create sides. Now we've added this new edge to create new geometry to model from. So I want to just select this entire middle ring to then start to like scale it out to create the beginning of the curve of the barrel. How I'm going to do that, I don't have to go around and then middle mouse and just click, click, click. A very quick way of selecting this entire ring is double clicking that one horizontal ring. It works for other places as well. But I just want to click this horizontal ring, so I'll double click that and it selects the entire loop. So now if I press R for my scale, I can now start to scale stuff out. And I'll use my scale gimbal in the middle here, because if I just use the red one, then I'm only going to scale out that way. If I only use my blue one, my Z-axis, I'm only scaling out that way. And my green one doesn't work because it's a flat surface, so there's no alternative Y-axis positions. But if I use the center, it's going to scale out in both the blue and the red axis. So I'll do that. And again, I'm going to eyeball this. I'll just kind of how thick, how round do I want this barrel, sorry. And I'm going to say about there. Cool. So now I've started to get a bit of characteristic to my asset. It's starting to look, from a distance, it's starting to make sense, which is great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add another 2 divisions to the top and to the bottom, doing the exact same thing that I've done before, using the selecting the edges and then going to Edit Mesh. Mesh Tools, Connect. So I'll go back to Edge mode. Remember, holding right click, getting this menu up, and then going to Edge. I'm just going to drag a selection box over the top section like that. So I'm only selecting the vertical lines, the vertical wireframe going around there. Mesh Tools, Connect. Now it's saying Connect Segment. That's what I want. I'll middle mouse, bring to the left, and then we've got that. Press enter for there, and then I'll do the same down here. I will Mesh Tools, Connect. Now it's remembered that I had 2 connections in there before, so there we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale these out again, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to double click this bottom one, select all that. I'm going to shift double click the one above it, the line above it, miss this middle one, shift double click this one, and then shift double click this one. There we go. Now that's all them selected. Now what I want to do is scale these out so I can start making a more smoother bend to my barrel. So let's do that. Oh, oh. I mean, it's working, but it's not necessarily working how I want it to work. See, what's happening is I'm scaling out from the center of this gimbal, and it's taking every one of these axes into consideration. It's taking the X and the Z, and it's all taking the Y. So the further I go, the further out these go. And that can be very useful in some aspects. But for this, I only want to move out in the Z and the X axis. Now, in the old days, how we did this is we would tell Maya to ignore a certain axis, and we would do this by holding control and then clicking the axis, clicking and dragging on the axis we want to ignore. So I want to ignore the Y axis. I don't want these to go up or down. So I'll hold my control and I'll drag. You can see now that they're coming in and out, but they're not actually going up and down like that. Now Maya or Autodesk have done something really nice. They've actually given you this function in these little squares here, and the color of the square basically just says what axis it is ignoring. So if I want to ignore the Y axis, I'll use the blue square. If I want to ignore the X axis, I'll use the red square. If I want to ignore the green axis, I'll use the green square, like that. So what I'm going to do is just give my barrel a little bit of shape like that. And you can see now it's looking quite nice. So at this stage, I've not done any saving. I should have saved when I first created the barrel. I'm going to do a save. I'm going to go barrel _01. Okay. Cool. Now it's time for me to create these rings. Okay. And I'm going to create the top and the bottom ring a certain way, and then I'm going to create the middle ring a certain way. I create the space for that ring anyway. And there are going to be two different ways. I'm going to create the top and the bottom ring area the same way I made these lines going across here. So I'm going to use the same function that I've used before with the connect edge, but I'm just going to change the parameters a little bit. I'm going to slide the edge further down or further up so that it makes the edges a bit wider. Because if we, at least for me anyway, I feel that these loops, these rings need to be a little bit thick. I will create a first ring. You can see that we've got our new ring in there, but maybe the ring it's creating a little bit too thin. So I'm going to go, and first I'm going to open up my tool settings, because the bug that I have on my system is it doesn't want to bring up the tools as I'm using them. So I'll bring up my tool settings first, make sure I've got everything selected properly. I have. And then I'm going to go to Mesh Tools, Connect. Cool, there we go. So one segment is all I need. And then I'm going to slide. Okay. So I'm actually going to do this 0.4. So I'm moving 1 decimal point down. And the reason I'm keeping that as a whole number and not just eyeballing it is that so I'll just complete that tool. There we go. So that's my new ring there. And if I go down here and do this, I can go the other way. So 0.5 is the middle point between this edge and this edge. Obviously I've gone down 1 decimal point at the top. So if I go up 1 decimal point to 6, there we go, it'll give me the same distance from that edge to that edge as it's done up here. So now that both my up and my top and bottom ring are going to be the same width, which is really cool. Now the last one is going to be the center one, and I'm going to use a very, very cool tool in this. It's called the bevel tool. And this is, so we've used some new tools in here. We've used the connect function inside Mesh Tool, which basically draws a new edge across selected edges like that. And we're going to use the bevel tool, which takes an edge. So I've just clicked my center edge here, and I'm going to go to bevel, which is this tool here. next to the merge tool. Hit bevel, and you can see what it does. It basically takes that line and splits it into two, like that. So it takes that one line and then it splits it. And I'm going to eyeball this. About there. Okay, so I'm using the fraction. The same way I used the extrusion tools, I'm going to use the same method here. The fraction is the distance that these two new edges are pushed away from each other. Segment is how many segments is inside this new area. Now I don't want any new segments, so I'm just going to keep it as one. There's just one face in between these 2 points. Depth is when you've got a major curve, you can kind of see it moving there. When you've got a major curve, you can either have the curve go inwards or outwards. So you can either have a soft bump or kind of like a bit of a chiseled edge. So I'm going to keep that as one, and then I'm going to leave the rest of these. I'm just worried about segments and fraction. And in fact, at this point, I'm only worried about fraction, so I'm going to take segments all the way down. Cool. So now our barrel is starting to really take shape. Visually from a distance, it doesn't look any different from when we started adding these edges. But I'll just do a save. No, there we go. No, there we go. There we go. I'll do a save now. There we go. I'm going to extrude the loops here. Of course, you can try, if you want to try and get yours as realistic as possible, you don't have to push your rings out as far as I push mine out here. But I wanted that sort of kind of cartoony, kind of stylistic bent to it. So I'm pushing out mine a little bit. So if I go back to my scene, I'm going to do the exact same thing I've done with the crate, but I'm going to kind of step up that difficulty level. I'm going to step up that method, okay, by doing a couple of things. I'm going to extrude all these edges out at the same time, and I'm going to select everything at the same time. So I want to select this ring of edges around the very bottom, as well as the ring of edges in the middle and the ring of edges at the top here. Now I can go around and I can individually click all these, and remember there's 20 edges, so that's 20 up here, that's 20 around here, and there's 20 down here. So that's 60 edges, and I don't really feel like doing that because I'm really lazy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click a face. I'm going to hold shift, and I'm going to double click the face next to it. I'll do that again. I'm going to click a face, and then I am then going to hold shift and then click the face next to it. This will then keep carrying on that selection round and round and round. You can do that in other directions like that. So select the face, shift and double click the face next to it in the direction you want to go. I can do that the same, so I'm going to, well, I still have to hold shift at this point. So hold shift, click, and then double click, and then shift, click, and then double click. There we go. So I've got these 3 rings selected. And now I'm going to do my extrusion. So I'm going to click extrusion. So, and then I'm going to just move thickness. And that's it. That's all I have to do. Again, I can play with a local offset, which basically does the same thing as thickness in this case. I can change something to do there if I want a certain quality to the barrel. For divisions going down this area, I can have that if I want. Oops, so I'm just going to bring that thickness out. There we go. Very cool. So now that's the rings of my barrel have been brought out. There's a couple of things I'm going to do to these rings just to make sure that they work visually. Things that kind of annoy me that I had to go back and not have to go back, but I just went in and sorted out. As I've extruded this, I've moved with the thickness tool. So I'll do it again. In fact, I'll just do that whole function again. The thickness tool where we see, remember that the z-axis is a forward axis. It's forward or back, it's facing forward, it's the direction that something is moving. Now what thickness does is it takes every one of these individual faces that I've got selected here, and it's going to move it out in that face's individual direction. So in this case, because we're in a bit of a slant angle, it's going to move at a slant angle like that. It's going to go in a diagonal like that. So if I overdo it, you can see what I mean. So the middle ones are just going straight because there's no crooked angle to it. But the top and the bottom, because they were on a slight angle, they started going up and down. They started like doing that. So I'm just going to bring them back. Bring it back, bring it back. And let's bring it back there. Now because of that, you can see here that this edge has been raised up. So the flat lid here, or what will be the lid, and this edge are now at different angles. Now you can keep that if you want. You can absolutely keep that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. In my personal opinion, I want that to be flat. And this also gives me a very good chance to use not a new tool, but use a tool that we've used already, or a function, in a different way. So I'm going to go to edge mode, and I'm just going to select this entire top ring of edges here going around. And I do that just by double clicking it. So I want all the edges going around that way, so I'll just click an edge, double click an edge. There you go. So if I press W, I'll get up my translate tool. And I'm going to use my snap to vertex. Now this is really easy to remember. V for vertex. I want to snap to a vertex. I hold V. You can see that it's going to snap because the center has turned to a circle and our vertex snap icon has been highlighted. Okay. So now using because I want to snap to the same level as this plane here. I want to bring it up or down. So I'm going to grab this axis, which is the Y axis. I'm going to click and drag down. Now what's happening is it's looking for the vertex closest to my cursor, not to the actual edge. So if I wanted to snap to something down here, I just drag my cursor around. And you can see how it snaps. The manipulator is snapping all over the place. Okay. So I'm just going to snap that to this level here. I'm going to do the same thing down here. So I'm just going to select the outer ring here, and then I'm just going to hold V, grab the Y-axis, and move my cursor closer towards one of these vertex there. And now it's nice and flat. And that way I don't have to move it up and snap it to the deck once I want to export it for a game end. You know, it helps me a little bit. Small little things. Cool. So we're most of the way there now for our construction. The basic shapes there. If you look at it from a distance, it's definitely a barrel. Now I'm going to make the indentations for the top and the bottom. Okay. And they're super easy to do. They're going to be done the exact same way that we did the top of the crate. Just a little bit different. So I'm going to go to face mode. Well, not a little different at all. Just one step in front of it. I've just got to go through and I'm going to carefully select all these different areas. All these different faces here. Okay, so I'm going to do that carefully because if I rush and click, I'm going to be dragging a marquee box and you're going to see that I'm selecting stuff all over the place. And I don't want that because when I start extruding, they start extruding and that's just going to give me a massive headache. So I'm going to go through and carefully select. Now, at risk of throwing another tool at you, there's a different selection tool I can use for this, and it's over here on the left, and it's where you got this icon here. It's this third one down. It's like a little paintbrush with a circle. This is the paint selection tool. I can actually go in and, providing that I'm already in face mode, I go and select this, and then I can go and click and drag. It's a little bit, it doesn't grab everything as easy, but it does grab. There you go. And it can be a little bit cleaner. I'm just getting rid of the grid there as well by pressing this little grid button. I can turn the grid on and off. I'm just going to select the bottom bit, just going the old-fashioned way. just so I'm nice and careful. And whenever you're doing lots of selections like this, just be very, very careful about what you're doing. Make sure you're not selecting anything else. So when you're done clicking your selection, just have a look around, make sure you've not got anything you weren't meant to click. If you were, there you go. Now, let's do some extrusion. So I'm going to click extrude, and then there we go. So I can then click offset. And there we go. I'm bringing in on the top and the bottom at the same time, which is very cool. I'm bringing in what should be the wood coming up past this cast iron section to here. That's how I'm seeing it, the thickness of the wood. Okay, so I'm going to click extrude again, and this time I'm going to bring thickness in. So you can see there, top and bottom doing the same thing. And then if I want to give kind of like a bit of an angle to the wood, either coming in or coming out, I can just do something, and I can decide how deep and how shallow I want that. And there we go. That is the barrel constructed. So now there's nothing left for us to do construction-wise to the barrel. What's left to do is just UVing and then texturing. So I'm going to do a save, and then we're going to get on to do some UVing. So you can see how simple that was. It's using a couple of new tools, quite simply. You know, we're not doing any crazy stuff. Obviously, I'm saying it's easy. I've been doing this for just over a decade, but I was in the same point as you on a piece of software that was far worse than this. The original Mayas weren't great. They were quite hard to deal with, and obviously as time's gone on, they've got better and better and better. The thing which is really crazy is just thinking in 3D. It's trying to picture, how am I going to make this? How am I going to make this? How am I going to make this? And it's just practice. It's not getting too overwhelmed with stuff. It's thinking logically about stuff a lot of the time, and just trying not to get too overwhelmed, and just having fun with it. I mean, the fact that you can create things so quickly and then get them into a game engine and then get them working is super awesome, I reckon. So the UVing with this is going to be very different, because with the crate we had this very, very clean laid out geometry, UV, sorry, which fit perfectly into this grid, and everything was nice and cool. And then we could like interchange different panels so they could have different designs. This is going to be a little bit different. We're not going to use planar for 90% of this. We're only going to use planar for maybe the top and the bottom of the barrel. A lot of this is just going to be the cylindrical unwrap function, and then we're going to be doing some kind of things just to make sure that it's nice and clean. Okay. Because we're doing cylindrical unwrapping, because generally this is a cylinder. Even though we have messed around with it, it is a cylinder. Oh, I'm just going to delete the history on this as well, because we've got all this information here. I'm just going to delete that, just so we're dealing with a nice naked geometry with no past history that might mess us up. Okay, so I'm going to open up my UV editor, and this is what my crate looks like without the UVs done. Okay, it's got a pre-made UV kind of set to it, and it's not great. If I see this as someone's handed in texture, unfortunately, you know, you're going back and doing it again. You know, this isn't a texture we can use for this. If I bring up the checkerboard, you can see that it's goofed. The top and the bottom work, I guess, but we're going to redo them for the sake of just doing UVs. Okay. Now, the difference about this is we're going to be selecting individual areas and unwrapping them separately. So instead of like projecting the entire model at once, we're going to be projecting certain sections to keep it nice and clean. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to be doing is projecting the wooden section, this wooden area here. So I'm going to do a trick that we've used already before as well. I'm going to be selecting the center, because I'm going to be doing the grow selection using the shift and period. So to make that work in my favor, I'm just going to find the center of this group of edges, this group of faces I'm going to be projecting. And in this case, there's 3 faces going down in the depth. So I'm just going to select the middle one of both of these. Shift space, shift and period to grow the selection, and then I've got that selected. And what I'm going to do now is go up here to cylindrical mapping. I'm going to click that. And as you can see, it's unwrapped. I mean, it's a bit hard to see at the minute, but if I go to this button here, so it's still in this area where we've got our checkerboard and our cut UV. In fact, we'll put UV edges on. We'll keep that on. It's here, this toggle shaded UV display. If I click that, it's going to turn blue. So what I'm looking at here is UVs are the direction that they're facing. So these UVs are facing towards me, so they're blue. If they were facing away from me, they're red. There's nothing wrong with them being red. It just means that they're facing away from me. It only really means something if you're going to put text on, because if I put text on this, red, it would appear backwards. But if I put text on this, it would appear the right way around. So I've just projected those. So we had this, and I'm just going to move them up a little bit, just to get them out of the way of this area first. Okay, and then just going to bring them together. So I'm going to bring the checkerboard back and just check something. I can see that they are okay, but the squares are a little bit squat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of these shells, making sure that I've got the checkerboard turned on, because I want to see how these squares are going to react. And then inside the UV editor, I'm going to scale them in the y-axis. Oh, so I've got discrete scale turned on from the last thing we were doing. So there we go. So make sure discrete scale is turned off. Oh. Okay, so hopefully that doesn't happen with you. That's just a bit of a bug I've got in my Maya. So hopefully, like I said, it won't happen with you. So I'm going to get these and I'm going to scale them in a direction. So I'm going to I'm going to test, just grabbing the y-axis. I'm just going to test which way is better, and I'm going to scale them so that it is more square. And I might need to move some of these around, so okay. So there, I've just, because the cylindrical projection doesn't always get the best results straight away. We have to go in there and kind of like tweak with it a little bit, but it's only a little bit of, you know, scaling just to make sure that it's as square as possible, which it is. I know it gets a little bit crushed up here, but I'm not particularly bothered about that too much. So the next thing I'm going to do, sorry that kind of went on a bit of tangent because I had to fix something, is I'm going to grab the rings and do the same thing. So I'm going to grab the broad sections of these rings and then do the shift full stop to bring those out, to select those. There you go. And then I'm going to do cylindrical projection like that. There we go. Now what's happening with this is it is still an orthographic view that's been wrapped around it. So this center one here is the center ring, and obviously we can't see these. We can't see these edges here. They're being warped, just like with the crate and its inner area. So what I'm going to do is a little bit of manhandling. I'm going to, especially with the for the middle one, I'm going to grab all the center faces there. So all the faces going round there. I'm not grabbing the top or the bottom. And I'm going to just scale them in. I'm going to keep an eye on this because you can see here they are squashed. So if I scale them in and turn them into squares, it's also then exposing the top and the bottom. And they're a bit harder to see here, but they would have become more equal. It's just a bit hard to see. I'm using my my experience and my eye, my judgment to make that call. So I'm going to do the exact same thing on these up here. You can see there that they're really kind of messing each other. So I'm just going to bring this one down like that. This one up like that. I'll just make this a little bit bigger just to see what's going on. So I'm just going to move that center line into a bit of a better position so that we can see the top and the bottom. Okay, they're looking okay. Looking okay. And you can actually as well just grab, I'm going to just go select all the UVs at the very bottom here. Take that off so it's easy to see. And I'm just going to, because looking here, the one at the top is quite thin. The one at the bottom is a bit larger. So I'm going to grab all the UVs at the bottom of this and just broaden that out a little bit. Same with down here. I'm just going to grab these. And then, well, first I'm going to do the same thing as I did. I'm going to just try and get these looking better. Okay. For the interest of time as well, I'm just going to say that's fine. Of course, in class I would have shown you ways of doing things, other ways of doing things, taken more time on it. But in this case, this is just a supplement. So there's two things we've forgotten to do, but we're going to do the exact same way. It's these inner sections here. So if I turn off the checkerboard again, it's these sections here. We've forgotten to do these. Well, we've not forgotten. We're just going to leave them to last, like that. Now I'm going to do the exact these. I'm going to do these the exact same way that I've done the other edges. I'm going to do a cylindrical unwrap and then just fix stuff from there. A lot of these unwraps don't work in quotation marks. They don't work straight away. You've got to kind of like tweak it a little bit. So cylindrical unwrap, and I can see that they are red, which means they're facing away from me. So if I just flip them using this little doodad here, sort of sailboat, see red means it's facing away from me, and it makes some of these functions kind of work a little bit weirdly. So I'm going to flip into the blue. Okay. Now there's one kind of cool little trick I can do here. So if I just bring so I'm going to also move them out of the way into space so I can just deal with them together. There you go. Right. So if I turn on my checkerboard and I'm looking at this, I can see that these aren't looking as square as they should be. Here on the UV sheet, they look quite thin, but on the actual 3D, they're a bit thicker than this. So I'm going to just, again, this is using my kind of like my own intuition, my own kind of mind's eye. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to select all these faces that are facing me, top and bottom, and I'm going to scale them in. So again, I'm exposing this upper lid because here, because the cylindrical unwrap is still an orthographic view, it's not seeing these flat sections here. So if I just scale this in together like here, I'm exposing these edges so I can then start to mess with them here. Now I'm pretty sure there's very, very easy ways of doing this, but again, I would much rather you guys learn the hard way and then learn how to really use these tools and learn quick little tricks which in the end don't really serve you much grace. So there we go. So I'm just eyeballing that, and I'd probably spend a little bit more time on that myself. But that's that done. The UVs are done. I'm going to leave it. In fact, yeah, I'm going to leave the lids and the top and the bottom alone because they've already been done. Okay. So now I've got all my pieces, and I just need to get them into here, into this top right UV space, because that's where all the texture is going to come from. Okay, so what I do as well is I get everything into groups. What's this, and what's this? Okay, so here is my wooden panels. Here is my top, and I guess I try and line stuff up as best I can while I'm doing this. There you go. So here are all my wooden panels. So that's top, middle, bottom, and then here are all my cast iron, aluminium, steel, whatever you want to. Well, it won't be aluminium if it's medieval, but that's what they are. And I might put them to the side like that, so that I've got all my on my texture sheet. I've got my wooden section, and then I've got my metal section. And I got my lids. There you go. So this one's been a bit more quicker going through because a lot of the tools are being used over and over and over again. And by this point, I'm expecting you to kind of get it a little bit more. At this stage, we're going to pack all these UVs into the UV space. There's a couple of different ways we can do this. We're going to do this by eye, where we literally grab them, move them in, scale in, and try and make them fit. Now, what's really cool about something that's cylindrical is that we can have a repeated texture going around all this, so that we can try and keep it as seamless as possible, making sure that, you know, if a player walks around something, there's less likelihood that they're going to see an obvious, here's where the texture ended and here's where the texture began sort of thing. Because if I don't know about you, but if I see that in a game, I kind of get a little bit kind of taken out of the moment. And there's one way you can do this by using this, which is the layout UVs or pack. And if you click that, then it kind of tries and do the best job it can. For me, it doesn't always do the best job. So one thing that I like using is something called normalize. And what normalize will do is just find everything and just try and make it fit inside the UV, the biggest UV space it's sitting over it can, which sounds weird. So if I have all my UVs predominantly laid over this top left area here, if I go to polygons and make sure you got everything selected in UVs, I go to polygons, I go down to normalize, and I'm not just going to click normalize straight off. I'm going to click this little button here, and by default it'll look like this. Now, normalize collectively or normalize each face separately. Keep it collectively, just so you can make sure that nothing's going to be overlapping from each other. Now, preserve aspect ratio needs to be turned on, and I'll show you why. We've spent all that time make sure all our squares are nice and everything's all equal. If we now, without this preserve aspect ratio, do that, it's going to make it fit to this square, and it's going to destroy all our aspect ratio. It's going to make everything squidged again, which you don't want. So go back to normalize option box, and I'm going to click preserve aspect ratio. Center and closest tile, this means it's going to fit it inside whatever tile it's closest to. So I'll click that now. There we go. So it's made it smaller and fit inside this grid, but then it's not actually changed anything about our texture, which is great. And then I can move that around and make it fit to the texture sheet as much as I can. Now what's interesting is it's going all the way up to the edge here on both sides. So as a texture, and this is how textures work. If I've not already explained this in class, this is how textures work. When a texture gets up to the edge here, and it's a square texture, it will then repeat over here. So you can have something just moving all the time, and it's not actually moving anywhere, it's just repeating the texture. So you can have something called, you can have a word like tools being written on this, and you can have T in this area here, you can have TO and then OLS, and on here it will be in a straight line, and it will look like it's part of the same texture, but really it's been cut in half. And then I'm going to grab my tops and bring them in. So there we go, and then make them fit in as best they can. There we go. And that's it. That's our barrel done. So I'm going to do a save. That's our barrel done and UV'd, which is great. That means now that I can then go take that into Photoshop and start texturing it, and then start messing around and see if I can create something that I really like this. And I'm going to show you how to create, you know, the shiny effect or the appearance of surface texture and that sort of thing. I'm going to show you how to do all that sort of stuff, but not in this video, because I think we're going on long enough now. So now I can then, the same way I've done the other one, I can go and send this off to Photoshop by selecting all the UVs in face mode, going over to polygons down to UV snapshot, and then I can send this to barrel build, let's call this barrel UV, barrel underscore UV, 1024, that's fine. Yep, save that, and then that will then be over in my folder, so I can then navigate to barrel build, images, barrel UV, and then that will give me my super awesome UVs that I can then go and texture. And that is the crates and the barrels done. If I was doing this at speed, I could get both of these done and UV'd within 5 minutes. Don't take that as I need to get these done as soon as possible, as quick. Well, yeah, get them done as quick as possible, but practice is what I mean. I've made countless barrels and countless crates in my life, and they're fun to do, and they're really nice to make and then fill a scene with. And they're the basics of, we've used two basic primitives. We've used a cube and we've used a cylinder, and then on top of that we've used things like extrusion, bevel, combine, merge, connect. We've done some UVing, and a lot of these tools, these are 90% of the tools you're going to be using. Yeah, there are some nice things you can do with curves, and there's other tools you can use, and there's cutting tools and flipping tools, but we've already used 90% of the tools that you'll ever use. So that's the first assignment done. Obviously you would do your 2 variations of textures. It's all inside the handbook. If you need any help, obviously give me an email, or catch me if you see me walking around, and I'll be happy to help. Okay, cool. Look forward to see your stuff.